Cyberhype-4, Chinese Whisper Markets. Have you not heard of the Wanderers of Yue? Xu Wu Qi, Ancient Taoist Mystic, by CCRU. From Mute, Volume 1, Number 21. Published September 10, 2001. Beijing has won the 2008 Olympics. This victory is widely viewed as vindicative of a model of economic development that is centered on the strength of an authoritarian state. CCRU is watching for what is brewing at the margins. It looks not to the diktats of a Politburo, but to forces seeping in from the periphery. China calls itself the Middle Kingdom, but it still has edges, and increasingly the edges are taking over. Nowhere is this clearer than in Shenzhen, a small town in the Pearl River Delta. In 1979, when it achieved the freedom granted to the special economic zones, Shenzhen was nothing but farmland. 22 years later, its streets are filled with skyscrapers and frenzied shoppers, the product of an economy growing at a staggering 34% a year. The key to this success lies precisely in its distance from the center. In Shenzhen, there's a saying, "The mountains are high and the emperor is far away." State-centered Confucian society was traditionally hostile to traders. As early as the late Chao dynasty, 1100 to 770 BCE, undesirables were banished to the areas south of the Yangtze River. Merchants were exiled to the edges of the world, populated by pirates and Taoist sorcerers. In Chinese hyperstitional lore, these edges are known as the lands of Yue. This zone, on the southern coastal edge of the mainland, bred a maritime culture and commercial dynamism and entrepreneurial risk that was sharply distinct from the inward-looking, landlocked state power of the north. Yue spawned a hybrid population with an offshore mentality, inspired less by the rigidity of Confucianism than by the underground anti-authoritarian countercultures of Taoism and Zen Buddhist heterodoxies that long had flourished in the Chinese periphery. It is this hybrid, dynamic, peripheral culture, rather than the state, that is the engine of economic growth in the Chinese world. For thousands of years, the Yue culture spread outside its borders. Coastal trade brought it to Siberia, Korea, Japan, Indonesia, through the Indian Ocean, the Malay Peninsula, and across to the Indian subcontinent. This overseas movement dramatically accelerated when, in 1276, the Mongols invaded, and previously sedentary populations swarmed down from the north. Forced outward by the influence of the nomads, the people of Yue dispersed. Today, there are approximately 60 million Chinese living outside the mainland. This makes the Chinese diaspora the second largest in the world. By far, the majority of these originate from the southern coastal provinces, regions which were once the ancient kingdom of Yue. This diasporic population has produced its own distinct market culture, unlike that of the colonists, merchants, and multinationals from Europe, America, and even Japan. Chinese business operates in an exterior relation to state-backed capitalism, with its lumbering bureaucracies, centralized decision-making processes, and national headquarters. It functions instead through a true transnationalism, planet-wide networks of communication and connections, guangqi, and a proliferation of small and medium-sized businesses familiar with insecurity and limber enough to maneuver in unfamiliar environments. In the 21st century, this Chinese diaspora has reconnected with its home on the mainland's southern periphery. Through its influence, a decentered outward-looking mode of development based on foreign investment and export-oriented growth has been introduced. It is this, rather than the Central Committee, that is transforming the fate of China. Beijing has 7 years to prepare to welcome the world inside its borders, but the outside is already invaded. The exiled wanderers of Yue have returned.